Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. This is WHO's Conversations in Science. And today we're talking to Dr. Sylvie Brion. She's the director of the Department of Global Infectious Hazard Preparedness. Sylvie's team tracks several dangerous and infectious pathogens around the globe. Welcome, Sylvie.
Hello.
Sylvie, we are going to talk today about myths and science. Many of these myths and misinformation have been circulating along with the COVID-19 around the globe. And some of these questions that we're going to talk about today are actually sourced from Google's most searched questions. Also, some of the questions that we get on various social media channels. So let's get started first with the one about weather. So we hear again and again different versions of this myth that the weather affects the transmission of this virus, that if the weather changes from warm to cold or from cold to warm, that transmission would change. Is that a myth or a fact?
What we have seen so far is that some countries with hot climate have had outbreaks, but similarly countries with a cold climate also have outbreaks. So it seems that the weather doesn't affect significantly the COVID-19 transmission. However, what we know now, there is specific settings and circumstances that affect the disease transmission. And for instance, if you are a long time in a crowded, closed space with limited ventilation, there is more risk to have COVID-19 transmission. And this is sometimes what happens in winter. Because it's cold outside, people tend to stay inside in places that are poorly ventilated, closed, and sometimes crowded.
Let's say I am infected with COVID-19. If I get into a pool, can I transmit it to others? Can water transmit this virus?
So water cannot transmit COVID-19. Drinking water is not transmitting COVID-19, and if you swim in a swimming pool or in a pond, you cannot get COVID-19 through water. But what can happen if you go to a swimming pool which is crowded, and if you are close to other people, and if someone is infected, then you can be, of course, affected. So that's why even in swimming pool, it's important to maintain physical distancing.
Another one, this one is from Google's most searched questions. Can mosquitoes transmit COVID-19?
Mosquitoes cannot transmit COVID-19. Although we know that some viruses like Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, or dengue can be transmitted through mosquitoes, but COVID-19 cannot be transmitted by mosquitoes.
Sylvie, there is so much misinformation out there, and a lot of information is pushed to each one of us. It's hard to distinguish the good from the bad. How can people know when information is to be trusted?
This is a phenomenon we see with each epidemic. There is an infodemic, which is the overabundance of information, good or bad, but that makes it difficult for people to differentiate what is good information from what is bad information or useless information. And then people feel confused, and sometimes it increases their fear and anxiety of the disease. So it's very important during an epidemic to manage this infodemic, and everybody can contribute to this. First of all, people need to look at trusted sources of information. Sources of information like the WHO, for instance, or other technical agencies, because we spend a lot of time to verify information. And the second thing that is very important, in addition to go to trusted sources of information, is that everybody needs to be very careful when we spread information through social media or when we discuss with neighbors or friends. When you have an information that you are not very sure about, please verify it before spreading it. And like that, we will all be infodemic managers, and we will reduce the spread of misinformation and disinformation.
In social media posts, we see that Italian studies have found that COVID-19 is actually not caused by a virus, that it's caused by a bacteria, and that by using antibiotics, it can be cured. What is the science behind that?
COVID-19 disease is caused by a virus, and this has been proven by many times. The virus has been isolated by many laboratories in the world, and we even have the genetic sequence data of the virus. So it's not a bacteria. And using antibiotics to treat COVID-19 will not help, because it's a virus and not a bacteria. But what we have seen in some hospitalized patients is that they were given antibiotics not to treat COVID-19, but to prevent superinfection by other bacteria, because some people are really fragile, and we fear that on top of COVID-19 they can get also another bacterial infection.
Sylvie, we also hear this question very often about alcohol and COVID-19. If you have COVID-19 and you consume a lot of alcohol, it'll sanitize you, it'll disinfect you and kill the virus. Science or myth?
No, in fact, drinking alcohol doesn't cure or doesn't prevent COVID-19 infection. The virus is not sensitive to the alcohol we drink. But maybe people are confused because they see that we use hydroalcoholic gel to wash our hands, but in reality the alcohol that is in the hydroalcoholic gel is much more concentrated, and this is certainly not something you can drink, otherwise you will have serious side effects. So it's only to wash your hands, not for drinking.
Sylvie, we also hear a lot about garlic. If you consume garlic, it protects you from COVID-19. Is there science behind it?
Regarding COVID-19, so far we have no evidence that garlic is a treatment for this disease. So some studies are studying it, but again, I mean, we need to really cross-check the different studies before making any recommendation about garlic. What is for sure is that it's not good for health to abuse of garlic and to take too much garlic expecting that garlic will cure the disease. I think it's important for people, and I understand that people can be very stressed and very anxious about this disease, but there are other ways to reduce anxiety, and there are other things people can do to be better protected, like washing hands, wearing a mask in crowded place, maintaining physical distancing.
Can you explain to us how scientists look at these myths and how do they verify these myths?
Yes, sure. The issue with the scientific process is that it's a long process, because at the beginning you have an hypothesis and you wonder maybe this product or this drug can work and be a treatment for this new disease. But then you have to implement studies in different places to check if really it works or not. And so this is the scientific process that at the end enable you to have evidence. But it takes time. You need to test the hypothesis on many people before you can get definitive results. So until all the studies are done, we cannot say there is evidence. And currently with COVID-19, it was a new disease only a few months ago. So studies are ongoing. But as I said, it takes time. So some studies are finished and they get results. So the results are really interesting. But before having a conclusion or a definitive answer, we need to see what are the results of the other studies and make sure that all the studies conclude to the same thing.
Thank you, Sylvie. That was Dr. Sylvie Briand, busting some myths about COVID-19. If you see some misinformation or have some questions, please go to WHO's Mythbuster section on our website, where we often address some of these myths. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.